My husband asked me to wait in the lobby, 3 floors. That was all it took for 11 years of trust to free fall from the ceiling to the polished marble floor. He said, "Just stay down here." I heard the elevator ding close behind him, and a few minutes later, I heard a woman's laughter echoing from a cracked open door. 3 seconds. That was enough time to understand I was no longer the main character in my husband's story. My name is Reese Edwards. I am 38 years old, an ER nurse at Horizon Gate Medical Center. I am the person who patches up other people's emergencies all night, and by day, I pretend my own 11-year marriage is not bleeding out internally. The Armitage Grand Hotel. That is where the bleeding stopped pretending to be a scratch and revealed itself as a severed artery. I work the night shift. Give me a multi-car pileup, a septic shock, or a gunshot wound, and I'm calm. My hands do not shake. I thrive on black coffee, the smell of antiseptic, and collecting vintage tin lunchboxes from the 1970s. I can spot a liar at triage from 20 feet away, a junkie trying to score painkillers, a husband who accidentally slammed his wife's hand in a car door. I see the tells, unless that liar is Grant Holloway, 40 years old. He is the director of operations at Novodyne Solutions, a medical tech company that makes shiny machines I will never understand. He has that specific brand of corporate handsome good teeth, an expensive haircut that always looks effortless, and a voice that sounds like a weighted blanket. When we met, he was the nicest guy anyone had ever met, according to my family. He still uses that voice on me, the one that makes you feel safe, right before he explains why whatever you are feeling is an overreaction. This staycation at the Armitage Grand was his idea, a chance to reconnect. That is the code word middle-aged couples in our suburb of Hawthorne Ridge use when they have run out of things to say at dinner. It is the polite ritual you perform before you admit the patient is dead. The lobby was absurd, all gold inlay, whispering fountains, and art that looked angry. I watched the receptionist 20-something, hair pulled into a severe bun, give Grant a smile that lasted about 2 beats too long. He smiled back, that same high-wattage beam he uses for closing deals. We settled into the lobby bar, a dark wood monstrosity called the Scribe's Perch. I watched his gaze linger on the female bar manager as she explained the bourbon selection. It was just a glance. With Grant, it is always just a glance. I ordered an old-fashioned. I needed something strong enough to numb the part of my brain that was already trying to sound an alarm. We were halfway through the drink, making the same small talk we always made. His stress about quarterly reports, my frustration with new hospital admin policies, the neighbor's agonizingly slow landscaping project. Then, his phone vibrated on the polished mahogany bar top. It lay screen up. A preview banner flashed across the lock screen. "She's here already." It vanished in a second, but I saw it. My heart did that familiar, ugly little kick. Grant snatched the phone so fast he nearly knocked over his water. He flipped it. Screen down. A dry laugh escaped his throat. "Client," he said, not looking at me, already typing a reply under the table. "Always an emergency." "On a Friday night?" I asked, keeping my voice light, the way a good wife should. "That's the tech world. Honey, they never sleep." I nodded. I sipped my cocktail. I noted the detail, filed it away, and then promptly buried it, just like I had buried the late-night calls, the sudden networking trips, the credit card charges for restaurants I had never heard of. I was an expert at burying things. In the ER, you have to just get through the shift. In my marriage, I had turned it into an art form. He finished his drink in one swallow. He stood up, smoothing the front of his ridiculously expensive shirt. "Listen, I need to grab something from the room. Why don't you wait here in the lobby? Order another drink. I won't be long." I smiled. "Okay." He leaned down to kiss my forehead, but his eyes were already scanning the elevator bank. He turned and walked away. I watched him slide his keycard into his trousers pocket. He did not take his suit jacket, and he did not take his phone. He left his phone on the bar. Grant Holloway, a man who checks his email while brushing his teeth, a man who would feel naked without that vibrating rectangle in his hand. left his phone. That was not a mistake. That was arrogance. He was so sure I would just sit there, like a good dog, waiting for him to return. The intuition that saves me from anaphylactic shock cases, the little electric hum in my gut that tells me when a patient's just tired is actually a cerebral bleed, started to scream. It was not just the phone, it was the cologne he was wearing, a sharp, sandalwood scent I did not recognize, not the clean vetiver I had bought him for Christmas. It was the shirt. It was too slick, too shiny, not the soft cotton he would wear for a normal night with his wife. He was not going up to get something. He was going up to someone. I decided, in that instant, I was done being good. I was done waiting in lobbies. I picked up my half-finished coffee from the table earlier, a lukewarm reminder of the morning. I walked past the two friendly receptionists and hit the up button for the guest elevators. As I stepped in, I pulled out my own phone. I fumbled with the passcode. My fingers suddenly slick. I opened the voice recorder app and hit record. I slid the phone into the breast pocket of my blazer. If I am wrong, I thought, I am just a paranoid wife. But if I was right, if I backed down again, if I let him gaslight me later, I needed this. I needed evidence against my own memory, because my memory had a history of betraying me in favor of his apologies. The elevator was silent, mirrored, showing me a woman who looked tired and pale under the aggressive lighting. The ding for our floor, the 21st, sounded like a flatline monitor. The doors slid open. The hallway was plush, quiet, and yellow. Too yellow. At the far end of the hall, our suite, the suite, 305, was ajar. The door was cracked open just enough to spill a slice of light onto the carpet. I heard it before I saw it. A laugh, high, throaty, and definitely not mine. I moved slowly, my shoes sinking into the carpet. My blood was rushing so loud I could barely hear the faint sound of ice clinking against glass. I crept closer, staying in the shadow of the opposite wall. I angled myself, just enough to see through the gap. 3 seconds. Grant was sitting on one of the heavy armchairs by the window. The city lights glittering behind him. His tie was off, his jacket slung over the back of the other chair. A woman was on his lap. She was younger, dark hair. She was wearing a silk blouse that was partially unbuttoned. Her back was mostly to me, but I saw his hand, the one that held mine when my father died. The one I'd held after my last miscarriage, was resting possessively on her hip. As I froze, the woman turned her head slightly, laughing at something he must have whispered. Our eyes almost met. I saw a flash of dark eyeliner and red lipstick. I stopped breathing. The air in the hallway turned to cement. I stumbled back. I did not run. I just reversed, hitting the elevator call button with the heel of my hand, jabbing it again and again. Close, close, close. It felt like pounding on a chest that would not restart. The doors finally slid open. I fell inside, pressing L for lobby. I leaned against the mirrored wall, watching the numbers descend. 21, 20, 19. I watched my own reflection, a pale, stunned ghost. I had not made a sound. I had not confronted them. I had not screamed. I had simply collected the data. The diagnosis was in stage 4, terminal. The elevator doors dinged open in the lobby. I stepped out, walked past the fountain, and slid back into the same armchair in the scribe's perch. I took a sip of my now cold coffee and stared blankly at the sports highlights playing on the oversized television above the bar. A man had just hit a baseball very, very far. The crowd was roaring. I felt nothing. My phone, still in my blazer pocket, buzzed against my ribs. I pulled it out. The recording app was still running. I stopped it, saved the file, and then saw the text preview. It was Grant. "Are you still in the lobby?" My hands were perfectly steady, not a tremor. It is the strangest thing about shock. In the ER, I have seen people walk in with catastrophic injuries, calmly asking for a glass of water. The body protects itself. My fingers moved over the keyboard. Yep, I put the phone down. Screen up, right next to him. I waited. He came back about 15 minutes later. I watched him approach. A performance of casualness. His hair was slightly mussed, that one lock falling over his forehead in the way he knew I found endearing. His smile was dazzling, a 100-watt bulb of reassurance. It was too wide. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his seat. "Client things got complicated." He smelled of his sandalwood cologne, but there was a new layer to it, a heavy, sweet, cloying note of vanilla. It was not my perfume. It was not the hotel's soap. It was a free sample of another woman, delivered straight to my table. "Everything okay?" I asked. My voice sounded normal, even to me. Maybe I'm a little tired. "All good now," he said, grabbing his phone. "Ready to call it a night. We have that big suite upstairs." That night, in the king-sized bed that cost more per night than my first car, Grant slept. He was on his back, breathing deeply, a soft, gentle snore that had been the soundtrack to my life for 11 years. Tonight, it sounded like a taunt. I lay perfectly still, my eyes wide open in the dark, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. I stared at the vague outline of the generic hotel art on the wall. I did not cry. I catalogued. I replayed every red flag I had so dutifully, so lovingly, ignored. The emergency business trips to cities that did not have a Novodyne office, the sudden need for passwords on his laptop. For company security, the credit card statements with charges for dinners at places I had never heard of, always explained away as client entertainment. The long calls he took in the backyard, pacing by the hydrangeas, his voice low and urgent. "Just a supplier issue, honey," and my responses, "Of course. I understand. Get some rest." I thought about our house in Hawthorne Ridge, the perfect, 4-bedroom, suburban colonial with the white picket fence. Yes, we actually have a white picket fence. We have the manicured lawn Grant fertilizes every Sunday. We have neighbors who wave when we pull into the driveway. It was a movie set, a meticulously crafted advertisement for a happy, stable, successful American life, and I finally understood my role. I was not the co-star. I was the set dressing. I was the cheap, non-speaking extra hired to stand in the background, smiling vaguely, to make the leading man look grounded and respectable. The next night, I punched in for my shift at Horizon Gate. The double doors of the emergency department hissed open, and the familiar wave of chaos washed over me. The rhythmic beep of the EKG monitors, the sharp, clean smell of antiseptic, the squeak of running shoes on polished linoleum, someone shouting for a crash cart in Trauma 2. I took a deep breath. This, right here, was the first time I had felt safe in 24 hours. This place, with its blood, and its panic, and its brutal honesty, felt more like home than my own bedroom. My work husband, Manny, saw me checking the supply cart. Manny is the best nurse in the unit, a Latino guy with a wicked sense of humor and eyes that see through every shield. He snapped on a pair of purple gloves and leaned against the counter. "Reese," he said, his voice low. "Who pissed in your coffee? You look like you want to perform open-heart surgery on someone without anesthesia." A raw, bitter laugh almost escaped me. I swallowed it. I could not tell him, not yet, saying the words, "My husband is cheating on me in a hotel suite," would make the fracture real. It would turn the internal bleeding into an open, gushing wound, and I was not ready to code in front of the nurse's station. "Just tired," I said, the standard ER lie. I forced a tight smile. "Hey, if we get any patients admitted tonight because an elevator got stuck, send them to me. I'm feeling particularly inspired." He raised an eyebrow. He knew I was lying, but he let it go. "You got it. We've got a STEMI rolling in. Bay 1, let's go." Sarcasm was my morphine. It did not fix the wound, but it dulled the nerve endings enough for me to function. Later, around 3 a.m, I was in a quiet bay changing the dressing on a post-op appendectomy. My hands were gentle, practiced, automatic. My mind was elsewhere. In the ER, my world is governed by a strict, sacred protocol, triage. You assess the most critical injuries first. But before you act, you stabilize, you stop the bleeding, you get vitals, you gather the data labs, x-rays, patient history, then you diagnose. Then you cut. In my marriage, I had violated every step of that protocol. I had skipped triage. I had skipped stabilization. I had jumped straight to blind, idiotic trust, without ever checking the data. I ignored the patient history every time it was presented to me. I had been a bad nurse to my own life. This time, I would follow the procedure. During my 30-minute lunch break, I sat in the buzzing fluorescent hell of the hospital cafeteria. I took a blank patient triage form from my scrub pocket and flipped it over. I pulled a pen from my hair and drew 4 columns on the back. I was creating a new chart. The triage of Grant Holloway. Column A, shared assets. The house in Hawthorne Ridge. The joint checking and savings accounts. His 401k. My pension. Column B, his schedule. I would go back 5 years. Every business trip. Every hotel loyalty point. Every single expense report I could find. Column C, his words. Every lie. Every excuse. Every plausible, reassuring explanation. Column D. My gut. Every time my intuition had screamed danger, and I had let him silence it with that calm, condescending voice. You're just tired from your shift. Reese, you're being too sensitive. Do you really not trust me? The shift ended as the sun was just beginning to stain the sky that sick, grayish-pink color of a fresh bruise. I stood by the bank of elevators in the main hospital lobby, waiting to go down to the parking garage. My scrubs were rumpled. My hair was a mess, and my eyes were hollow. I looked at my reflection in the polished steel doors. I looked like a victim. I would not be one for long. I made a promise to the tired woman staring back at me. One of these days, he's going to walk into an elevator with the full identity of the perfect man, and when he steps out, every single one of those masks will be stripped away, and this time, I will be the one pressing the button. The shock didn't last. Shock is a luxury. What replaced it was the cold, sterile focus I got right before a code. You don't panic. You act. I waited 2 days. I went to work. I charted. I drank bad coffee. I came home, listened to Grant talk about his stressful meetings, and I nodded. On Monday morning, while he was in the shower singing, he was actually singing, I called the Armitage Grand Hotel. I used my calm, slightly concerned triage voice. Good morning, I said to the concierge. My name is Reese Edwards. I stayed in Suite 305 this past Friday with my husband, Grant Holloway. I believe I left an anniversary bracelet in the room. I'm just frantic. The woman on the other end was instantly sympathetic. Oh no, Mrs. Edwards, I'll have housekeeping do a full sweep. You're a lifesaver, I said. And just one more thing, it's a bit of an odd request. For the insurance claim, I need a detailed folio of the stay. And honestly, he booked so many trips for his company. Novodyne. I'm worried I might have lost it on a previous trip. Would it be possible to get emailed copies of any bookings he's made there in the last 6 months? It would really help me narrow it down. There was a polite pause. Ma'am, I'm not usually authorized to send. I let my voice crack, just a little. Please, it was my mother's. I just need to find it. The crackle of a keyboard. I'll see what I can do. I have his corporate email on file. The Novodyne one. I'll send them there. Actually, I said, he's in back-to-back meetings. Could you send them to my personal email? It's REDWARDS. 5 minutes later, my inbox pinged, a PDF. It wasn't just our staycation. There were 4 other bookings over the last 8 months. Always a suite, always midweek. Grant was proud of his corporate American Express. He loved the weight of the metal card and loved to brag that his boss told him to spend whatever it takes to close the deal. He was also careless. He left the paper statements on his home office desk, a casual performance of his own importance. I didn't need the paper. I logged into our shared household finances portal. I had access to all the accounts, including the feed for his corporate card. I cross-referenced the dates from the hotel PDF. There they were, the Armitage Grand, the Westin, the Hyatt Regency. The charges were not just for the rooms, they were for room service, always for two, $90 breakfasts of champagne and eggs Benedict, a $700 charge from the hotel spa, couples retreat package, $200 for in-room movies, which was odd, because Grant famously fell asleep during every movie we tried to watch. He wasn't just having an affair. He was using company funds to give her the luxury lifestyle he'd always claimed we couldn't quite afford yet. I kept digging. This was the data gathering phase. I went into our joint checking account. I was looking for cash withdrawals, hidden credit card payments. I found something cleaner, more clinical. Every month, on the 15th, for the past 12 months, an automatic electronic transfer, $500. The recipient, SLS Processing. I clicked the transaction details. Student loan services. A chill I hadn't felt in the hotel hallway washed over me. Grant had graduated from business school more than 15 years ago. He had a full academic scholarship. He bragged about it constantly. He had zero student debt. This wasn't a loan. This was an allowance. I needed more than bank records. I needed a face. That night, at Horizon Gate, I found Manny restocking the crash cart. "Manny," I said, keeping my voice low. "Your cousin, Leo. The one you said is a cybersecurity genius." Manny stopped checking the defibrillator paddles. He eyed me. "The kid who hacked his high school's grading system and gave himself a B+, so it wouldn't look suspicious. That Leo. Why did you forget your Facebook password? I need something recovered, from an old device, and it needs to be completely off the record." The humor drained from his face. "Reese, what's going on?" "I'm gathering data on a critical case. Can he be discreet?" "He's a 20-year-old hacker who lives on Red Bull and paranoia." Manny said, "His entire life is discreet. Text me the details." I met Leo in the hospital cafeteria at 3 a.m. He looked like he'd just rolled out of a server room. I handed him a large Ziploc bag containing the old iPad Grant kept in his home office desk, the one he hadn't touched in 2 years, not since he got his new model. "He never wiped it," I said. "He just tossed it in a drawer. I think he forgot his old iCloud account was still linked to it." Leo didn't even blink. He just took the bag. Classic sloppy practice. If the backup is still on the cloud, anything he deleted from his phone before he switched devices might still be cached. "Give me 24 hours. 24 hours later, he handed me a USB drive. "It's all in there. The old photo stream, deleted messages, cached emails from before the sync wipe. Good luck." I locked myself in the guest bathroom, the only room Grant never entered, and plugged the drive into my laptop. It was a digital graveyard. Photos, notes, texts, and then I found it. A screenshot, accidentally saved. It was a fragment of a text conversation. The contact name at the top wasn't a name. It was Logistics Director. The avatar was a small, crisp corporate headshot, a woman with professionally highlighted brown hair, a sharp navy blue blazer, and a smile so bright and toothy it looked painful. A public relations smile. It was her. It was the woman from the hallway, the woman whose silk blouse I had seen, the woman who had been sitting on my husband's lap. Logistics Director. A convenient, sterile, corporate euphemism. I went back to my own email. We still had a shared family calendar, mostly for show. I searched Grant's archived work appointments. I looked for any meetings involving logistics or planning. I found an email chain from 10 months ago. Coordinating the annual Novodyne Leadership Summit. I scrolled through the to field, and there she was. Jenna Cross, Regional HR Partner, Novodyne Solutions. The irony was so acidic it burned my throat. The head of human resources, the gatekeeper of corporate ethics, the person whose job it was to prevent this exact kind of behavior, the woman in charge of employee wellness, was currently wellnessing my husband. I went back to the files Leo had recovered from the iPad. I searched the restored email archive. I typed Jenna. The emails that appeared were not romantic. They were not filled with passion. They were cold. They were strategic. They were sent from Grant's personal email to her personal email. A carefully constructed paper trail. I read one from Grant, dated 6 months ago. Jenna, just a heads up. Reese is having another difficult period. She's becoming very paranoid, accusing me of lying about the Chicago trip. Her stability is a concern. Another one. From 3 months ago. She was asking about my blood pressure medication. I think she's projecting. You know the stress of her work. I'm genuinely worried she's struggling to cope. And then, the one that stopped my heart. I heard from a contact at Horizon Gate that she was recently given a formal warning for a medication error. She denied it, of course, but it fits the pattern. Her hands have been shaking. She seems volatile. I need this documented just in case she tries to make trouble. A lie, a complete toxic fabrication. I have never had a medication error in my entire 15-year career. My hands are the steadiest in the department. This was not just an affair. This was a conspiracy. He was building a file. He was meticulously, patiently, creating a narrative of the unstable, paranoid, angry wife. He was painting me as a liability, a danger to myself and my patients. I realized it all at once. Every red flag wasn't a sign of his infidelity. It was a calculated move in his long-term strategy. He was preparing for the day I would inevitably find out. When I finally exploded, when I reacted like any sane person would, he would just calmly open this file. He would show it to HR, to our friends, to my family, to a judge. He would not be the cheater. He would be the poor, long-suffering husband, finally forced to leave his crazy wife. I sat on the cold tile floor of the bathroom for a long time. The diagnosis was in. This was not a simple fracture. This was a complex, malignant tumor, and it had spread. I spent the next 3 hours transferring everything. The audio file from the hotel hallway, the PDF invoices, the corporate Amex statements, the screenshots of the student loan transfers, the recovered emails between Grant and Jenna Cross. I saved everything to a new, encrypted hard drive. I created a backup in a secure cloud, protected by a password he would never guess. And finally, I made a folder on my own laptop, buried deep in my system files. I named the folder Discharge Summaries. It was the most boring, bureaucratic title I could think of. No one would ever be curious enough to open a file that sounded like hospital paperwork. In my world, if you don't chart it, it doesn't happen. Oh, this happened, and my charting was just getting started. The Discharge Summaries folder was burning a hole in my laptop. But data is useless without a plan of action. I did not need a therapist. I did not need a best friend to cry over a bottle of wine. I needed a shark. My college roommate, Naomi Flores, was not a shark. She was a great white, dressed in bespoke suits. She specialized in 2 things, high-asset divorce and employment litigation. She was, as our friends used to say, delightfully brutal. She was polite in court, but her legal briefs could fillet a man from 1,000 yards. I texted her, "Need to talk. It's a new case. Your specialty?" Her reply was instant taco truck. Corner of 12th and Mercy, 20 minutes. The taco truck was 2 blocks from Horizon Gate, a battered blue vehicle that smelled like cilantro and victory. It was our old study spot. Naomi was already there, leaning against the side, sipping a Mexican Coke. She wore a cream-colored silk blouse and a pencil skirt that probably cost more than my car, looking completely out of place and perfectly at home. She didn't hug me. Naomi doesn't do sympathetic hugs. She does tactical assessments. "You look like hell." "Reese," she said, handing me a carnitas taco. "But a very focused, angry hell. I like it. Spill." Between bites of food I couldn't taste, I laid it all out. The lobby, the elevator, the 3-second view, Suite 305, the voice memo, Jenna Cross, regional HR partner, the student loan services allowance, and finally, the emails, the unstable wife narrative, the fabricated medication error. I expected an, "I'm so sorry." I expected outrage. Naomi just took a sip of her Coke and pulled a leather-bound notebook from her briefcase. "Okay," she said, her pen poised. "Give me the timeline, every date you remember. Give me the USB drive. I want to see every file in Discharge Summaries." I handed it over. She looked at the drive, then at me. Good name. Clinical, detached. You're already thinking correctly. We sat on a concrete bench as ambulances wailed in the background. Here's the landscape. Reese, she began. All business. You live in a community property state. That's good. Half of everything is yours. That house, the savings, but more importantly, his stock options. Novodyne is pre-IPO. His unvested shares are the real prize. That's the dragon's hoard. She tapped her pen on the notebook. This unstable wife narrative, that's his play to avoid splitting it. He's not just building a defense for cheating. He's building an offense. He'll argue dissipation of assets, that your erratic behavior and addiction cost him a promotion, or that you can't be trusted with a significant payout. He's going to try and paint you as an unreliable narrator of your own life to a judge. We are not going to let him use that playbook. She snapped the notebook shut. I need more. You've got the digital trail. I need the physical one. He's an operations guy. He's meticulous. He has a paper backup somewhere. He's arrogant. He thinks you're too stupid or too unstable to ever look for it. Go home. Wait until he's occupied. Search his office. I want bank statements, tax returns, and any private correspondence. He's got a severance package or a new contract he's looking at. I can smell it. Find it. That night, I felt a surge of adrenaline that was better than caffeine. Grant got home late, complaining about a brutal meeting with logistics. I made him dinner. I listened. I smiled. I suggested he take a long, hot shower to de-stress. The second I heard the water running a sound that used to mean safety, and now just meant opportunity. I was in his home office. It was immaculate. His domain, books on corporate synergy, awards, a row of perfectly aligned pens. I went to his main desk drawer, locked. I used the emergency key I'd seen him hide under the desk blotter years ago. Inside tax returns. Boring. I moved to the filing cabinet. More boredom. Old performance reviews. Manuals for his golf equipment. Then I saw it. Behind a stack of ancient, dusty Golf Digest magazines on the bookshelf, there was a small, square panel I'd never noticed. A wall safe. I tried the obvious codes. Our anniversary, my birthday, his birthday, nothing. Then I remembered his first major corporate win, the one he never shut up about, the Apex project. I typed APEX, 9721, the safe clicked open. It wasn't cash, it wasn't jewelry, it was a single, thick, manila folder. On the tab, in his precise, all-caps handwriting, were 2 words, exit strategy. My hands were shaking. I pulled it out. The first document on top was a draft of a severance and separation agreement between Grant Holloway and Novodyne Solutions. It was dated from 2 weeks ago. I scanned the terms. My eyes landed on the number, a 6-figure payout, a consulting fee that was clearly a bonus, a full, immediate vesting of all his remaining stock options. He was leaving the company. I scanned down to the signature page. And then I saw the clause. This agreement is contingent upon Mr. Holloway's successful and quiet transition, maintaining the image of stability and integrity that defines Novodyne's leadership. Any public scandal, domestic or otherwise, in the 90 days surrounding the separation date will render this agreement null and void. He wasn't just leaving me, he was cashing out. And he needed me to be the quiet, supportive wife for 90 more days so he could get his money. The second document was underneath it. It was a single-page, printed-out email. The to field was addressed to the chairman of the Novodyne Board of Directors. The subject line read, "Personal matter request for discretion." It was unsent, a draft, ammunition he was holding in reserve. Dear Harold, it is with a heavy heart that I must inform you of a developing personal crisis. As you know, my wife, Reese, has been under immense stress in her role as an ER nurse. I fear this stress has manifested in a deeply concerning way. I have reason to believe she has developed a dependency on hospital-grade opioids, stemming from long-term exposure and access. She has exhibited erratic behavior, paranoia, and recently, I've become aware of discrepancies in her work. I had to sit down on the floor. He hadn't just heard about a medication error. He was inventing one. He was accusing me of being an addict. He was accusing me of stealing drugs. If he sent that email, my career would be over. My nursing license would be suspended pending an investigation that would ruin my reputation forever, even if I was cleared. It all clicked into place. The affair with Jenna, the HR partner, the student loan payments, the severance package, the unstable wife narrative. I was the shield. I was the scapegoat. In his perfect plan, he would cash his massive check from Novodyne. When he was ready to leave me for Jenna, and I inevitably fought back, he would detonate this bomb. He would leak the email. He would present his file of my instability. Everyone, the company, our friends, the court would see him as the victim. The poor man whose wife became an addict and a thief. He would walk away clean, rich, and with a new, younger woman, while I was left with nothing but the ashes of my entire professional life. I put the folder back. I locked the safe. I put the key back under the blotter. I went back to the bedroom just as the shower turned off. The next day, I sat with Naomi in her sterile, glass-walled office. I told her about the folder. She didn't flinch. She just steepled her fingers, her face a mask of cold fury. "Okay," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "So, he's not just cheating on you. He's not just trying to protect his assets. He is actively, and with premeditation, preparing to destroy your career and your medical license to ensure a clean getaway." She stood up and looked out the window. "This changes the strategy. We're not playing defense anymore. This isn't a domestic dispute where we throw his clothes on the lawn and scream. This is a corporate takedown. He's prepared to pull your parachute, so we're going to pull him, right as he's jumping out of the plane." I nodded. The numbness was gone. The shock was gone. The grief was gone. All that was left was a vibrating, precise, surgical calm. I finally felt like myself again. I felt like I did at the start of a code, when everyone else is panicking, and I am the only one who sees the next 3 steps. "He has his exit strategy," I said, my voice as steady as my hands during a suture. "This will be my exit strategy for him." I needed a stage. I had to see her in person, not as a 3-second distorted image in a dark hallway, but under full, unforgiving light. The annual Horizon Gate Heart of the City Gala was in 3 weeks. It was our largest fundraiser, a massive event that brought in half the hospital's operating budget. I knew from Grant's endless bragging that Novodyne was a gold-level sponsor every year, and gold-level sponsors always sent a representative, usually from human resources or marketing, to sit on the planning committee. I volunteered for the vendor committee. It was the most boring, thankless job. Buried in spreadsheets for floral arrangements and catering bids, it was the perfect cover. She walked into the hospital's main boardroom for our second planning meeting, and the air physically evacuated my lungs. It was her, Jenna Cross, in person. She was even more assembled. She looked like she had been created by a corporate focus group. She wore a sharp, severe cobalt blue sheath dress that probably cost $800. Her brown hair was highlighted with a precision that suggested lasers were involved. Her smile was the same one from the headshot, bright, wide, toothy, and completely devoid of warmth. She was the human equivalent of a brand new, sterile syringe. She introduced herself to the table, her voice as smooth and polished as her shoes. "Jenna Cross, Regional HR Partner at Novodyne. I am just so thrilled to be supporting this wonderful cause and our frontline heroes." I just smiled and nodded when her eyes passed over me. I felt my jaw clench so hard I was surprised I didn't fracture a molar. The meeting was a blur of agonizing details, centerpieces, auction items, vegan meal options. Then Jenna spoke up, her voice radiating synthetic empathy. "On behalf of Novodyne, I just want to emphasize our commitment to this year's theme of frontline wellness. We are exploring several new partnerships to provide robust mental health support for your high-stress clinical roles. The level of burnout in the medical community is simply staggering." I stared at the platter of stale croissants in the center of the table. This woman, who was actively, personally, Helping my husband construct a file to paint me as a volatile and unstable nurse was lecturing me on mental health support. The hypocrisy was so thick, so potent, I could have aspirated on it. The meeting finally adjourned. People stood, stretched, and moved toward the lukewarm coffee urn. This was my window. I kept my phone in my blazer pocket. My thumb was already resting on the side button, ready to triple-click and start a new voice memo. A crowded, noisy, public boardroom I checked with Naomi, in our state. As long as I was a party to the conversation and had no expectation of privacy, it was perfectly legal. I walked over, forcing a weary, appreciative smile onto my face, the kind of smile I reserved for belligerent patients. "Ms. Cross Jenna." Her smile clicked into place, that high-wattage corporate beam. "Reese? Yes, so lovely to meet you. The work you all do, I'm just in awe." "Thanks," I said, playing the part of the humble, exhausted nurse. "I was so struck by what you said there, about burnout and mental health support. We need it, desperately." "Oh, it's a real passion project for me," she said, placing a manicured hand over her heart. "We have to take care of our best people." "Well, it's funny," I said, letting out a small, self-deprecating laugh. I looked down at my paper cup, as if embarrassed. "I actually know a little bit about Novodyne, my ex-husband. Well, I guess my soon-to-be ex-husband works there. Grant Holloway." I watched her face. It was a masterpiece of controlled shock. Her smile didn't vanish. It froze. It became brittle, like a thin sheet of ice. Her eyes widened, just fractionally, and her posture stiffened. "Grant?" she repeated, her voice a half-octave higher than before. You're Reese, you're Grant's wife." "Soon-to-be ex," I corrected her gently. I let my shoulders slump, projecting defeat. "It's been hard. I finally had to be the one to walk away. His career and the pressure he's under, it just became too much. He's so incredibly driven, you know." The change in her demeanor was electric. The brittle ice didn't just melt. It shattered, replaced by a wave of something that looked shockingly like pity. She was pitying me. "Oh, Reese," she said, and she actually put her hand on my arm. Her skin was cold. "I had no idea. He's been going through so much. He's been trying so hard to hold everything together. I knew he was separated, but—" I just nodded, playing the role of the dumb, overwhelmed woman who couldn't keep up. "It's been awful. I'm sure I'm the monster in his version of the story." "No?" she said, far too quickly. She caught herself, lowering her voice, creating a bubble of false, feminine intimacy. "No, of course not. It's just that he's a very private person. He's just been under such unfair pressure, from all sides. He really, really deserves some happiness. You know?" There it is. I thought, she's not just the mistress, she's the savior. She's the one who gets him. Jenna seemed to decide, in that moment, that I was a broken, confused, and slightly pathetic creature who had made the biggest mistake of her life. She, Jenna, was the one who truly understood his complex genius. "He's mentioned how controlling things had become," she said, leaning in. "How you couldn't really understand the demands of his position. How you lashed out when he had to work late." I fought to keep my face a mask of sad recognition. I was controlling, I lashed out. I was the one working 60-hour weeks in a trauma bay, paying down the mortgage on our movie set house while he was charging $700 couples retreat spa packages to the company card. "He just needs someone who's on his team," she continued, her eyes glassy with romantic conviction. "Someone who supports his vision for the future." "His vision?" I asked, feigning ignorance. She practically glowed. She was high on her own narrative. "Oh, you know, he's finalizing his exit package from Novodyne. A big one. We're moving. He's being tapped to help lead the new innovation hub in Austin. I'm putting in my internal transfer to go with him." She beamed, as if sharing a delightful secret. "We're going to get a house, something with a big backyard, maybe a pool. He even said we could finally set up a nursery. He's always wanted to be a father, But he told me you always claimed it was the wrong time, that you were too focused on your career. Nursery. The word hit me like a direct, high-voltage shock from the defibrillator, a jolt of pure, agonizing electricity that stopped my heart cold. I was too focused, for 5 years. I had begged him for a child. I had tracked my ovulation until I was cross-eyed. I had cried my way through 2 miscarriages, one of which he'd missed because of an emergency client meeting, and every single time, he was the one who pumped the brakes. Not now. Reese, the timing is bad. We're not financially stable enough, honey. Let me just get this next promotion. Then we can talk. Are you sure you can handle the stress of a newborn and the ER? He hadn't been delaying our dream. He had just been saving it for a different co-star. I must have gone white. I felt the blood drain from my face and rush to my feet. Reese, are you okay? Jenna asked, her synthetic concern flooding back. You look like you've seen a ghost. No, I managed, gripping my coffee cup so hard the cardboard lid buckled. No, just tired. I didn't realize he was planning all of that. In that second, beneath the white-hot pain, a new, colder realization crystallized. She had no idea. She wasn't his partner in crime. She was just the next Mark. She was the logistics director. All right, she was just another piece of equipment he was planning to deploy. She genuinely believed she was his legitimate successor, the woman who had won him from his cold, controlling wife. She had no idea about the student loan services account. She had no idea she was just one of his projects. He's a good man, Reese, Jenna said, trying to console me, her consoling me. He just was trapped. He even had to protect himself, professionally. He was so worried your instability would reflect badly on him at the company. He actually came to me for help. My blood turned to ice. My thumb pressed the record button. Help how? Oh, just HR things, she said, waving a dismissive hand, clearly proud of her power and influence. He was worried about your high-stress role, your access to substances at the hospital, and how it might look. I just helped him adjust a few details in his own personnel file, add some notes about the extreme stress he was under at home, to document the situation, just to protect him, in case you ever tried to make trouble. It was just a few internal memos. Standard HR procedure to protect a high-value executive. Got you. I had it. I had her. On tape. In my own hospital. Admitting to falsifying corporate records to build a false narrative against me, I made my excuses. I told her I had to get back to the floor for a patient. I walked away. My hand shoved deep in my pocket. My fingers wrapped around the small, warm rectangle of my phone. That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage long after my shift had ended. In the humming, concrete silence, I listened to the playback. I listened to her voice so confident, so smug, so utterly convinced of her own story. I heard the pity in her voice when she talked about me, and the blind, idiotic adoration when she talked about him. I heard her confess to a career-ending crime with the casual, self-important air of someone ordering lunch. I realized that in this entire 3-person disaster, there was only one person who wasn't lying to himself. Grant. He knew exactly what he was doing. Jenna was living in a fantasy he'd built for her, and for 11 years, I had been living in a fantasy I'd built for myself. He had made fools of both of us. The only difference was, I was awake now, and I was still holding the charts. I left the hospital boardroom, the recording of Jenna Cross's confession safely stored, my heart beating a low, cold drum. This was no longer a marriage. This was a patient with a multi-system failure, and I was moving from diagnosis to intervention. I drove straight to Naomi's office. I didn't even go home. We sat in her glass-walled conference room, overlooking the city. The sun was setting. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just played the recording. Naomi listened, her face impassive. She listened to Jenna's pitying tone. She listened to the smug confession of adjusting personnel files. She listened to the part about the nursery in Austin. When it finished, she didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said, "She's an idiot. And she just handed you her career. And his? She stood up and walked to the large whiteboard that covered one wall. All right, Reese, this is no longer just a divorce. This is a two-front war. Front 1, she wrote in sharp black marker, is legal and defensive. This is about protecting you. We protect your nursing license. We file for divorce first, citing irreconcilable differences, and we get a temporary hold on all shared assets. Clean, simple. That's our shield. She drew a thick line down the center of the board. Front 2, she said, her voice hardening, is corporate and offensive. This is about him. We dismantle his unstable wife narrative. We expose his relationship with an HR partner. We detonate his exit strategy and that severance package. This is our sword. She turned, her eyes bright. We need a venue for this, a place where his reputation, his family, and his money are all in the same room at the same time. He'll never agree to a meeting like that, I said. He won't have to, Naomi replied, already tapping away on her laptop. He's planning his own party. She turned the screen toward me. The Novodyne Annual Strategic Excellence Summit. It's their biggest corporate event of the year. The entire executive team, all the regional directors, the board members. It's in 2 weeks. I looked at the header on the promotional website. I had to laugh. It was a cold, dry sound. Of course it is, I said. The Armitage Grand Hotel, main ballroom. The scene of the crime, Naomi murmured. This is serendipity, or just poetic justice, and look who's scheduled to receive the top award, the Strategic Excellence Prize, for integrity and leadership. Grant Holloway, I read. He's getting a trophy for it. And that, I said, the pieces clicking into place like vertebrae, means Gloria and Martin will be there. Grant's parents, Gloria and Martin Holloway, were good people who had been blinded by their son's success. They were old money East Coast, people who valued appearances and reputation above all. They saw Grant as a corporate genius, a flawless provider. They saw me as the sweet, steady nurse, a nice, simple, harmless accessory. I was the wallpaper that made their son's expensive furniture look good. They fly in for this every year, I said. Gloria loves to tell her garden club about it. This is our audience. If we're going to neutralize his unstable wife story, we have to do it in front of them. I picked up my phone. I'll invite them to stay at the house. The next day, I called Gloria. My voice was pure sugar, bubbling with manufactured excitement. Gloria, I'm so excited for the summit. Grant is just, I'm so proud of him. Oh, Reese, dear, we are too, she gushed. Our boy, he just works so hard. We've already booked our flight. Wonderful. You must stay at the house. Please, I insist. And actually, I dropped my voice, as if sharing a secret. I'm planning a little surprise for him, something special, to celebrate. You know, after he gets his award. It would mean so much if you were both there for it. I could hear the gears turning in her head. She was already picking out a dress for the vow renewal, or picturing the first grandchild. A surprise? Oh, Reese, how lovely. We would be delighted, dear, absolutely delighted. Good. The family was secured. Now for the company, Naomi said when we next spoke. We need to light a small fire in his house, just to get them looking in his direction. She walked me through it. Using a public library computer, I created a temporary anonymous email address. From there, we sent a message to the Novodyne Ethics and Compliance Hotline. To whom it may concern, I am an employee who wishes to remain anonymous. I am concerned about the expense reports being filed by Director Grant Holloway. He seems to be using his corporate card for numerous personal, non-business-related expenses, including spa treatments and room service for 2 at the Armitage Grand. Furthermore, I believe he is funneling company money through a new vendor called Student Loan Services, which seems to be a shell company. This is deeply damaging to team morale. We attached copies of the hotel invoices I'd gotten, with the couple's retreat and breakfast for 2 circled. We attached the bank log of the SLS payments. It's not enough for them to fire him on the spot, Naomi explained. But it's more than enough to trigger an internal audit. It's a thread. They'll start pulling it, and by the time the summit happens, their auditors will be in that ballroom, watching him. The final piece, the visual confirmation. Naomi drafted a formal, terrifying legal letter. I just had to sign it and send it to the Armitage Grand's security team. It was a request for any and all security footage from the 21st floor, specifically the elevator bank, from the night of my staycation. The official reason, a personal security incident involving an unauthorized individual, posing a potential safety concern during my stay. It took a week of back and forth, but a hotel chain's legal department is always more scared of a lawsuit than of a privacy violation. My inbox pinged. I received a link to a secure, downloadable MP4 file. I sat with Naomi, my laptop on her conference table. I don't know if I can watch this, I said. You don't have to, she said. I will. She hit play. There I was, stepping out onto the 21st floor, the cracked open door, me, fumbling for the elevator button, disappearing. Naomi fast-forwarded. Okay, 10 minutes later. The elevator doors opened again. There was Grant, and there was Jenna. The footage was grainy, from a high corner, but it was them. He pulled her in, his back to the camera, and pressed the door-close button. He pushed her against the mirrored wall. His hands were in her hair, her hands his shirt. Stop, I said, my voice hoarse. That's enough. We have it. Wait, Naomi said. Her eyes narrowed. Reese, wait, rewind, go back. Before you even got on the elevator, go back 15 minutes. I scrolled the timeline back. The elevator dinged open on the 21st floor. Grant stepped in, but he wasn't alone. A silver-haired man in a suit was with him. Who is that? I don't know, I said. Yes, you do, Naomi said, pausing the frame. Look at the name on the unsent email from his safe, the one addressed to the board. My blood went cold. Harold Briggs, the CFO of Novodyne. We watched the silent, grainy footage. Briggs and Grant. They weren't talking. It looked tense. Briggs, the CFO, reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick, white, 9x12 envelope. It was bulky. He handed it to Grant. Grant didn't look at it. He just took it, folded it once, and slipped it into the inside pocket of his own suit jacket. Briggs clapped him on the shoulder, said something, and stepped out of the elevator on the 19th floor. Grant continued up to the 21st, where Jenna was apparently waiting. That wasn't a business meeting, I whispered. No, Naomi said, her eyes glittering with a kind of lethal, professional focus. That was not a bonus. That was not a memo. That was a payoff. Something off books, something that our friends in internal audit would find fascinating. I took a deep breath. Okay, we have the evidence. We have the audience. We need the stage. I went back to the Armitage Grand's website. I didn't book a room. I booked a day-use executive suite. It was on the 22nd floor, one floor above the scene of the crime. It was designed for high-level meetings, with a dark mahogany conference table, plush chairs, and a 75-inch wall-mounted television. I told Grant that night, my voice full of wifely devotion. Honey, since Mom and Dad are in town for the summit, I wanted to do something special. I booked us a private suite for the afternoon. You know, just a place for them to rest between the sessions, and for us to have a little family-only celebration brunch before your big award. He was so deep in his own narrative, so convinced of my stupidity, that he didn't even blink. He just beamed. Reese, that's amazing. Really, really thoughtful. He kissed my forehead. You're the best. I'm just so proud of you, I said. Naomi and I met one last time. We loaded the USB drive, the Jenna recording, the elevator footage, both the kiss and the envelope exchange, the scanned exit strategy folder, the unstable wife emails. She printed out hard copies of everything. She placed them in a crisp, black binder, on the spine. She typed a label. I looked at the name she'd chosen. Operation Lobby to Penthouse. It started with him telling you to wait in the lobby, Naomi said. closing the binder with a sharp, definitive thud. It ends with us, in the penthouse, showing him the ground floor. The week before the summit was a surreal, sickening performance of domestic bliss. Operation Lobby to Penthouse was fully armed, but at home, I was suddenly thrust back into the honeymoon phase. Grant became the husband I had been missing for 5 years. He brought me coffee in bed, a dark roast with 1 sugar, just how I liked it. He massaged my shoulders when I got home from a brutal 12-hour shift, his voice a low, concerned murmur. "You work too hard. Reese, you're a saint." On Wednesday, a massive bouquet of lilies, my favorites, the ones he hadn't bought since our 5th anniversary, arrived at the house. Just because, the card read. That night, he poured 2 glasses of expensive Cabernet and sat across from me at our ridiculously large dining table. He raised his glass. "To us," he said, his eyes crinkling with that practiced sincerity. "I know I've been distant. Work has been a monster, but I'm finalizing a new deal, a big one. Once that's done." He smiled. "How does Hawaii sound?" "After my bonus comes in, just you and me, we'll reconnect. For real." I looked at him over the rim of my glass. I saw the whole performance, clear as a diagnostic X-ray. This was not love. This was lobbying. This was an executive managing his most critical, unstable asset. He needed the supportive wife to remain placid and smiling for just a few more days, just long enough to get his image of stability clause signed and his 6-figure check cashed. So I played my part. I was a good, supportive wife. "Grant, that's..." I let my voice soften, as if I was touched. "That sounds perfect," I smiled. I thanked him for the flowers. I even took a picture of them, the light hitting the vase just right, and posted it on Instagram. My caption was a masterpiece of benign ambiguity, feeling so appreciated, blessed lilies. I was, in my own way, documenting the evidence. Inside, I was a walking, talking countdown clock. I was marking off the days on my mental calendar like a patient checks off doses in a pre-op antibiotic regimen. 7 days, 6, 5, 4 days before the summit. The first counter move came. It wasn't from Grant. It was from my own hospital. I was finishing my charting when my manager, a no-nonsense woman named Sharon, approached the nurses' station. "Reese," she said, her voice flat, "HR needs to see you, now." In 15 years, I had never been called to HR. It was a summons that meant one of 2 things: you were getting fired or you were being sued. I walked into the sterile, beige office of our HR director, my heart hammering a frantic, ugly rhythm against my ribs. "Have a seat, Reese." He didn't smile. He had a single sheet of paper on his desk. "We received an anonymous complaint. It was filed 2 days ago. It alleges a pattern of unusual behavior surrounding the dispensation of controlled substances. Specifically, that you've been seen near the narcotics locker during off hours and have appeared agitated and unsteady on shift." The words, they were so familiar. Unstable, volatile, agitated. It was Grant's vocabulary. He'd pulled the trigger. He had actually filed a complaint against me at my own job. I almost laughed. "That is a lie," I said, my voice coming out colder and steadier than I'd expected. "It is a complete fabrication. I've never..." "We know," the HR director said. Cutting me off, I blinked. "What?" He sighed, leaning back and rubbing his temples. He looked tired. "Reese, your file is spotless. You're one of our best nurses. The accusation, frankly, is absurd, but I have to follow up. And the timing is what's interesting." He tapped the paper. "This complaint came in anonymously, but it's not the first time your name has come up this month. About 3 weeks ago, we received a very unusual professional inquiry about you. From your husband's company, Novodyne, from their HR department, in fact, a Jenna Cross." I kept my face a perfect, neutral mask. "She was asking vague questions," he continued, "about high-stress roles, employee wellness checks, and our policies on impaired professionals. It was highly irregular. We sent back a form letter stating we don't discuss our employees." He leaned forward. "So, 3 weeks ago, Your husband's HR partner was sniffing around. And now, an anonymous tip accusing you of exactly what she was hinting at. That's a bad look. But it gets better. My heart stopped. Yesterday, he said, I got a call from a colleague, an ethics officer, at Novodyne. It seems they are conducting their own internal audit on your husband. Something about financial irregularities, misuse of corporate funds, potential kickbacks through a shell vendor. The air left my lungs. My anonymous tip, Naomi's small fire. So, Reese? The director said, his eyes sharp. I have a real problem. I have a star nurse being targeted by what looks like a coordinated, malicious smear campaign from her husband, who is also being investigated by his own company. This isn't an HR complaint. This is a domestic dispute that's spilling over, and I will not have it jeopardize my staff. He slid the complaint across the desk and tore it in half, then dropped it into his shredder bin. I'm marking this as unfounded, malicious intent suspected, but that's not why I'm telling you this. He looked at me, his gaze softening for the first time. I heard a rumor. While I was shredding this, Manny, Dr. Evans, and two of the other senior attendings were in my outer office drafting formal character references for you. They heard a whisper about this and came running. They said the accusation was, and I quote, libelous bullshit. You have a loyal team. Reese, don't let this mess take you down. I walked out of that office in a daze. Grant had fired his shot. He had tried to detonate the bomb in his exit strategy, and it had fizzled on the launch pad. He didn't realize I had already laid my own groundwork. His attempt to paint me as an addict had only succeeded in painting him as a desperate, vindictive liability. The loyalty of my team was the part that made my eyes burn. The ER is a family. We see the worst of humanity, and we survive by trusting each other's hands, each other's guts. They were my people. Grant had forgotten that. That night, I needed one last document for Naomi, a copy of our 2023 tax returns, which Grant kept locked in his desk. I waited until he was on a long, urgent conference call in the basement. I picked the lock with the same ease I'd had for years. The file was there, but taped to the underside of the desk drawer, hidden from view, was a small, black, cheap-looking smartphone. A burner. My hands went numb. It was charged. I powered it on. No passcode. Of course not. Arrogance. The text messages were all there. I scrolled past Jenna HR, my stomach lurching, the same fawning, breathless messages about Austin, about their future, about how I was so cold, but there were others. Chloe Morningcup, the barista from the coffee shop near his office. He was telling her she was the only bright spot in his day, and that he was trapped in a dead marriage. He'd promised to take her to Napa. Megan Seattle, an ex-colleague, the messages were more explicit. He was telling her he was coming out on a business trip next month, and that he couldn't wait to see her. He'd promised her that his divorce was almost final. It wasn't just Jenna. It was never just Jenna. Jenna was just the most convenient, the one with the most corporate power, the one he could use to build his exit strategy. The others were just maintenance, sops to his ego. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a sociopath with a script. He promised every woman the same thing, freedom from a cold, unfeeling wife. I felt a cold, clear rage settle over me. It wasn't hot. It wasn't chaotic. It was surgical. I took my own phone. I took crystal clear photographs of the texts to Chloe, the texts to Megan, the promises, the lies. Then, from the same anonymous email address I'd used for the ethics hotline, I composed a new message. I addressed it to Jenna Cross's personal email account, the one I'd found in the iPad backup. The subject line was simple. When he told you you were the only one, I attached the screenshots, 5 of them, no commentary, no explanation. I just hit send. I just dropped the bomb, and I waited. The night before the summit, I didn't sleep. I stood in our guest bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I was not afraid of Grant. I was not afraid of what would happen. I was afraid of the 11 years of muscle memory. I was afraid that at the last minute, when I saw him, some deep, vestigial part of me would want to protect him, that I would soften, that I would remember the man who held my hand when my father died, and forget the man who was building a pyre for my career. I had to kill that part of me. I looked at my reflection, the tired eyes, the scrubs I'd just taken off. I practiced. My husband asked me to wait in the lobby, I whispered. My voice was shaky. I tried again. Louder. My husband asked me to wait in the lobby. It sounded like a question. I took a deep breath. I thought about the medication error. I thought about the burner phone. I thought about the nursery. I looked at the woman in the mirror, and my expression hardened. My eyes went flat and cold, the way they do when the crash cart rolls in. My husband asked me to wait in the lobby, I said. My voice was low, hard, and perfectly steady. The rehearsal was over. I was ready to perform the operation. The morning of the summit, the air in our house was thick with forced festivity. Gloria was already downstairs when I came down, humming and talking about the lovely brunch she was looking forward to. Martin was reading the Wall Street Journal, grunting approvals, and Grant was preening. He stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the knot of his perfect silk, navy blue tie. His suit was a darker navy, custom-tailored, designed to broadcast authority and stability from 50 feet away. His hair was immaculate. He was the quintessential American executive, a walking advertisement for success. We drove to the Armitage Grand Hotel in his polished black Lexus. Gloria and Martin in the back, me in the passenger seat. My hands were folded in my lap. I felt like a surgeon on the way to a high-stakes, experimental operation. We stepped through the revolving glass doors, and the wave of déjà vu was so strong it was almost physical. The same towering marble lobby, the same scent of overpriced lilies and lemon oil, the same hushed sound of wealth. But this time, I wasn't the woman being told to wait. I was the woman holding the scalpel. Grant, ever the host, guided his parents toward the ballroom entrance. He paused, turning to me. He put his hands on my shoulders, his face a mask of earnest, public affection. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. He whispered, his voice low and for my ears only, "Thank you for this, Reese. Thank you for everything, for always believing in me." The condescension was breathtaking. I looked up at him and forced a small, devoted smile. "And thank you for believing I'm too stupid to know anything else." I thought, "I'm just so proud of you." "Grant," I said. It wasn't even a lie. I was, in a way, deeply impressed by the sheer, magnificent audacity of his fraud. The main ballroom was a cavern of corporate self-congratulation. 3 massive LED screens flanked the stage, all blazing the Novodyne slogan, integrity, innovation, impact. The words hung in the air, 20 feet tall. Integrity. I felt that bitter, surgical laugh rise in my throat again. We sat at a front table, table number 1. Gloria was vibrating with pride, her hand patting my arm. "Oh, look, Reese, Harold Briggs, the CFO, he's coming over." The silver-haired man from the elevator footage approached our table, his face a public smile. "Grant Martin, Gloria, wonderful to see you. And Reese, lovely as ever." "Harold," Grant said, standing to shake his hand, an easy, confident gesture between 2 powerful men. I watched the hand that had taken the thick, white envelope. I watched the hand that had rested on Jenna Cross's hip. The ceremony was long, a parade of buzzwords. Synergy, disruption, forward thinking. My mind was elsewhere. I scanned the crowd, a sea of dark suits and sheath dresses. I found her. Jenna Cross was not at a front table. She was in the back, near a service exit, sitting at a half-empty table with junior marketing associates. She was staring at her water glass. When I saw her face, I knew she had received my email. Her eyes were red, puffy, and bewildered. Her corporate polish had been scrubbed off. She looked like a woman who had just realized the life raft she'd been clinging to was, in fact, an anchor. She was still in her high-backed chair, but she was already drowning. My gaze drifted to the very back of the ballroom, by the main doors. Two men stood there, not sitting, not eating. They both wore identical, ill-fitting, off-the-rack gray suits. They were trying to look casual, but they radiated auditor. They murmured to each other, their eyes fixed on the stage, occasionally flicking to Grant at our table. Naomi had done her homework. She had forwarded me their headshots last night, Mr. Fields and Mr. Donahue, from Novadine's Internal Audit and Compliance Division. My anonymous tip had, indeed, been pulled. And now, the CEO boomed from the stage, the award that speaks to the very core of our mission, the Strategic Excellence Award, for an individual who embodies integrity, leadership, and a commitment to our shared values. A drum roll. Gloria gripped my wrist. Please join me in congratulating Grant Holloway. The room erupted in applause. The spotlight found Grant. He stood, kissed me quickly. A dry, papery kiss for the cameras, and bounded onto the stage. He accepted the heavy crystal trophy, a phallic, glittering monument to his own bullshit. He stepped to the podium. He beamed. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with false humility. Thank you, Harold, and the board. I'm speechless. But this isn't about me. It's about a team. It's about trust. Because at the end of the day, all we have is our transparency. All we have is the trust we build with our colleagues, our partners, and our families. Without that trust, you have nothing. My stomach turned. I could feel the bile rise in my throat. I looked at Gloria. She was openly weeping, dabbing her eyes with a cocktail napkin. Martin was clapping so hard his palms were red. And Grant looked right at me, from the stage, and smiled. He held up the trophy. This is for us. The applause finally died down. Grant returned to the table, a conquering hero, and was immediately swarmed by colleagues. I waited until there was a lull, then I stood up, clapping my hands together softly, my face alight with the brightest, fakest smile I could muster. Okay, everyone, I said, my voice projecting just enough to gather our group. That was amazing. Honey, just wow, Mom. Dad, Grant, let's not wait. Let's go celebrate. Just us. That surprise I told you about. I have the private suite ready for our brunch. Gloria gasped with delight. Oh, Reese, a private brunch. How wonderful. Grant, isn't she just perfect? Grant, high on his own supply of adoration and success, just beamed at me. Perfect, he agreed. I led the procession out of the ballroom. Me, the perfect wife. Grant, the perfect executive. His crystal trophy held in his hand like a scepter, and his proud, perfect parents. Trailing in our golden wake, we walked across the lobby, past the whispering fountain, to the main elevator bank. The same elevator bank. I pressed the up button. The doors slid open with a soft, expensive whoosh. We all stepped inside. The four of us. The perfect Holloway family. Framed in the mirrored walls. Grant, in the center, was admiring his reflection, holding his award. I stood in the corner, by the control panel. The doors closed, sealing us in the small, quiet box. I watched the numbers on the display climb. Floor 5, Floor 8, Floor 10. I thought of the birthday of mine he'd missed for an emergency trip to Chicago. Floor 12, Floor 15. I thought of the smudge of red lipstick I'd found on his collar one night, the one he'd blamed on a drunken colleague at the airport. Floor 18, Floor 20. The elevator dinged. Floor 21. The doors opened onto the plush, silent hallway. The same hallway. My stomach gave a single, violent lurch, but I didn't let it show on my face. It's just down here, I said, leading them to the right. Suite 2140. I used my keycard. The door clicked open. The suite was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A long, dark mahogany table was set for brunch. Silver-domed platters. A bucket of champagne on ice. Flutes sparkling. It was a picture of celebration. And on the far wall, a 75-inch television screen, black and waiting. Oh, Reese, Gloria breathed, walking toward the window. It's magnificent. Martin, look at this view. This must have cost a fortune, honey, Grant said, setting his trophy down on a sideboard, as if christening the room with it. It's a special day, I said, my voice smooth. I didn't move toward the window. I didn't move toward the food. I stayed by the door. Please, I said, gesturing to the plush chairs around the table. Sit down. Eat. Grant, Mom, Dad. Please, sit. They did as they were told. Gloria and Martin still chatting. Grant already reaching for the champagne. I remained standing. I picked up the remote control from the console by the door. I held it in my hand. It was small, black, and heavy. Grant looked up at me, a champagne flute in his hand, his smile finally faltering into a look of faint confusion. Reese, you're not going to sit... I looked at him. I looked at the man I had loved, the man who had built a gallows for my life. I aimed the remote at the black, silent screen. In a minute, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I just have one more surprise, the first part of the celebration. I looked at Grant, his smile frozen, his champagne flute halfway to his mouth. Gloria was beaming, expecting a slideshow of their son's childhood. Martin was looking at his watch, probably wondering how long this would take. Grant, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, air-conditioned hum of the suite. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. It was my triage voice, the one I use when a patient is crashing and I need a resident's full attention. About 3 months ago, right here in this hotel, you asked me to wait in the lobby. His smile didn't just fade. It dropped. The color drained from his face. I did, I continued. For a few minutes, until my nursing intuition told me that the patient was coding, that something was catastrophically wrong. I've spent the last 3 months gathering the data on that diagnosis, and today I thought your parents deserved to see the full chart. They deserved to know exactly what was wrong. I pressed the on button. The 75-inch screen flickered to life. It wasn't a slideshow. It was the grainy, high-angle, black and white feed from the elevator. Just 1 floor below us. The timestamp in the corner was clear. The date of our staycation. The video had no sound, but it didn't need it. We watched the doors slide open. We watched Grant pull Jenna inside. We watched him slam her against the mirrored wall. We watched his hands tangle in her dark hair. We watched her hands rip his shirt open. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was desperate. I was hungry. It was anything but a business meeting. The sound of shattering glass made me jump. Gloria's champagne flute lay in 1,000 pieces on the dark wood floor. The champagne foamed against the leg of the table. Jesus H. Christ, Martin whispered, his voice a hoarse, unfamiliar croak. It was the first time I had ever heard him swear. Grant shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. Reese, what the hell is this? Turn it off. No, I said, my thumb already on the next button. It was a mistake, he stammered, his eyes darting to his horrified parents. One night it meant nothing. She came to me, Reese. This is private. Is it? I clicked the button. The video vanished. The screen was now filled with crisp, clear, green and blue bubbles, screenshots, text messages. This one feels pretty private, too. I read the text aloud, my voice flat and dead. It was from Grant to Jenna HR. She's completely unstable. I'm telling you, the stress from her job has broken her. She threatened to hurt herself if I ever left. I clicked again. Another text. She's a liability. I can't trust her. She's paranoid and volatile. I just have to keep her calm until I can get out. I looked at Grant. I've spent my entire career sitting with patients on psychiatric holds. Grant, I've held the hands of women who actually wanted to die. To see you use their pain, to turn it into a cheap, convenient lie to cover your tracks. I shook my head. That's the part I find unforgivable. I had to, he yelled, his voice cracking. He was performing for his parents now. You were unstable. You were this. This is crazy. You're crazy. Am I? I clicked again. The screen went black. Then let's listen to your new, stable, future. My voice memo filled the room. The audio was clear. I'd cleaned it up, removing the background noise of the gala planning, isolating her voice. Just so supportive, Jenna's voice chirped, bright and smug, echoing from the high-end television speakers. He said we're moving to Texas. He's being tapped for the Austin hub. I'm putting my transfer in. I watched Grant's face. He looked like a man who had just seen his own car drive off a cliff. We're going to get a house with a big backyard. He even said we could finally set up a nursery. He's always wanted to be a father, but he told me you always claimed it was the wrong time. Stop, Grant whispered, his face ashen. I let it play for one more second. I just believe this is my chance to finally start a real life. I hit mute. The silence in the suite was deafening, broken only by Gloria's quiet, gasping sobs into a linen napkin. A nursery, Grant, I said, my voice soft. All those years, all those negative tests, you were just saving that dream for a different actress. Reese, please, he begged, and right on cue, there was a sharp, confident knock at the suite door. Grant didn't move. Gloria didn't look up. I walked over and opened it. Naomi Flores stood there, immaculate in a gray pinstripe suit, a black leather binder in her hand. Reese, she said, all business. Am I interrupting? You're right on time. Naomi, I said. Naomi stepped into the room. And right behind her, pale, shaking, and holding a handbag so tightly her knuckles were white, was Jenna Cross. Her eyes were red and swollen. The corporate makeup completely cried off. She didn't look at Grant's parents. She didn't look at me. She looked at Grant. Her expression not one of anger, but of raw, agonizing betrayal. The anonymous email with the screenshots of the other women had clearly done its job. Jenna, Grant said, his voice a pathetic squeak. What are you doing here? Naomi answered for her. Ms. Cross is here to correct the record. She stepped to the table, and with a small, discreet gesture, placed 3 printed-out screenshots on the mahogany, right next to the untouched plates, my photos from the burner phone, the texts to Chloe Morning Cup, the text to Megan Seattle. Jenna saw them. Her last thread of composure snapped. She looked at Grant, her voice a raw, broken whisper. A nursery. Napa. A Seattle business trip. Who are you? Jenna, I can explain. Grant started, moving toward her. No, she said, flinching away from him. Her voice rose, gaining a hysterical edge. You told me she was the crazy one. You told me she was the liar. You had me. You had me. She turned to Naomi, then to me, the tears now flowing freely. He asked me to help. He said he was scared of her. He said she was unstable and might try to ruin him, to ruin the company's reputation. He asked me to just add a few notes, to use the HR portal. We have a shared system with Horizon Gate for insurance verification. He had me soft flag her file. Just add a note about behavioral concerns and potential substance access risks from his end. He said it was to protect the company. He said it was to protect him. Naomi, who had been listening with the patient calm of a reptile, finally spoke. He had you falsify corporate records and file a defamatory report against a medical professional, using an intercompany portal. That's a federal crime. Ms. Cross, not to mention grounds for a career-ending lawsuit. Jenna finally, truly, looked at Grant. The adoration was gone. The pity was gone. All that was left was the cold, terrifying realization that she had been the tool, not the prize. Naomi let that sink in for a 10 count. Then, she placed her black binder on the table with a heavy, definitive thud. She opened it. While we're all here, she said, her voice addressing the entire room, let's review the full agenda. She turned the binder around. On top was a pristine copy of the unsent email from Grant's safe. This, she said, is a draft of a letter from Grant to Mr. Harold Briggs, accusing his wife, Reese, a 15-year veteran nurse, of being an opioid addict and stealing narcotics. A letter he was holding, ready to send, To destroy her life. Grant. Gloria shrieked, her voice like tearing fabric. Next, Naomi said, flipping a page, is a draft of Grant's exit strategy, his severance agreement with Novodyne, a very generous six-figure package, contingent on his image of stability being maintained. She flipped again. And finally this just came in this morning, a formal request from Novodyne's internal audit division, Mr. Fields and Mr. Donahue, who I believe are still downstairs requesting that Mr. Holloway remain after the ceremony to discuss several serious financial irregularities. Specifically, a shell company called Student Loan Services and a certain unauthorized, off-books cash payment from a senior executive. She pointed to the dark television, a payment, I believe, that was captured on the same elevator camera, just 15 minutes before the main event. Grant Holloway finally collapsed. He didn't just sit. He fell back into his chair, his hands covering his face. The performance was over. The stage was in ruins. I looked at his parents. Gloria was rocking back and forth, her face a mask of gray, abject shame. Martin just stared at the wall, his jaw working, a broken old man. I took the remote and turned the television off. The screen went black, reflecting the wreckage of the room. I didn't want this, I said, my voice quiet, but carrying across the room. I'm not asking for a single dollar more than what the law says is mine. I'm not asking for his reputation. He destroyed that himself, in 100 different, private, ugly ways. I looked at Gloria and Martin, my heart, for the first time, feeling a small, cold ache of pity. But before Novodyne's auditors brought Grant downstairs, I thought you both deserved to see the version of your son who didn't appear in that acceptance speech, the real winner. The silence in the suite was absolute, thick and heavy as water, broken only by Gloria's ragged, hitching sobs. Grant sat frozen, a statue of a defeated man. Right on schedule, as if summoned by the wreckage, a second knock, sharp and official, landed on the suite door. Naomi, who had been waiting for this cue, opened it. The two men from the back of the ballroom, Mr. Fields and Mr. Donahue, stepped in. Their ill-fitting gray suits looked even more drab in the luxurious room. Mr. Holloway, Fields, the senior auditor, said, his voice flat, "We apologize for the intrusion, Ms. Flores." He gave Naomi a curt nod. Informed us a private family discussion was taking place. Given the serious nature of our ongoing inquiry, we felt it was imperative we join you. He glanced at the binder on the table. We have reason to believe some of the materials being discussed here pertain directly to corporate liability. Grant's head snapped up. His eyes were wild. The sweat was visible on his forehead now. The shame of his parents was one thing. The criminal implications were another. Specifically, Donahue, the younger one, chimed in, pulling a folder from his own battered briefcase. "We've been examining the new vendor account you established 6 months ago, the one registered as Student Loan Services." Grant stopped breathing. "It is a shell company," Fields said simply. "The deposits from Novodyne, totaling over $60,000 in the last 2 quarters, match no known services rendered, but the most alarming discovery is the name on the LLC registration." He didn't look at Grant. He turned his dull, bureaucratic gaze on Jenna Cross. The articles of incorporation were filed in Delaware, listing the primary agent with a social security number and home address belonging to a Ms. Jenna L. Cross. "You?" Jenna, who had been standing by the window, trembling, went absolutely white. "What?" she whispered. "No, that's no." The funds were then immediately wired to an offshore account. Fields continued, as if reading a weather report. "As the sole registered agent of a fraudulent entity created to siphon company funds, Ms. Cross, you are currently the primary subject of a criminal fraud investigation." The crying stopped. The shaking stopped. Jenna turned, very slowly, to look at Grant. The betrayal and sadness in her eyes were gone, replaced by a cold, sharp, terrifying rage. You, she hissed, her voice a low rasp. You used my name. You used my social media. You told me that was a credit application for the Austin house. You set me up. Jenna, no, it was just a technicality. I was going to, Grant stammered, trying to stand. You were going to let me go to prison for your theft, she shrieked, the last shred of her professional veneer disintegrating. She lunged, not at him, but toward the auditors. I'll give you everything, she screamed, her voice cracking with fury and terror. Everything, every email, every log, every text message, he used me. He used the HR portal to build a fake case against her. She pointed a shaking finger at me. And he used my identity to steal from you, I'll testify. I'll give you all of it. Naomi, who had been watching this all with the quiet patience of a chess master, stepped forward and placed her hands on the back of a chair. So, that's where we are, Grant, she said, her voice cutting calmly through the hysteria. And here are your options. Option A. You fight. She ticked the points off on her fingers. You deny everything, in which case, I will immediately file this divorce petition, citing adultery, defamation, and dissipation of marital assets. Ms. Cross, here, will become the prosecution's star witness in a corporate fraud case. My client, she nodded at me, will file a separate, multi-million-dollar civil suit against you and Novodyne for libel and the malicious attempt to destroy her medical license. Your parents will be subpoenaed. This will be a public, brutal, and very, very criminal affair. You will lose everything, and you will likely go to jail. She let the words hang in the air. Gloria let out a thin wail. Or, Naomi continued, option B. She reached into her binder and slid 2 pristine, thick documents across the table, placing her own heavy silver pen on top of them. Right here, right now, you sign 2 things. First, this uncontested divorce settlement. Reese gets the house. All remaining assets are split 50-50. After the $60,000 you stole is reimbursed to the marital account. It also includes this binding affidavit, addressed to Horizon Gate Medical Center, stating that all accusations you made against your wife were false, fabricated, and made with malicious intent, fully clearing her name. She tapped the second document. And this, your immediate, unconditional resignation from Novodyne Solutions, citing personal reasons. She looked at the auditors. In exchange, Ms. Cross's status changes from target to cooperating witness, and my client agrees to walk away. Bound by this confidentiality clause, the scandal is contained. The choice, Naomi concluded, is yours. Grant looked at his parents. His eyes were wide, begging. He was a boy again. Caught. Mom, Dad, Gloria, her face a gray mask of grief and shame, looked at her son. Her voice was unrecognizable, a low, guttural command. Sign the papers, Grant. Mom, she did not do this, Gloria shrieked, her voice tearing. You did. You lied to us. You humiliated this family. You were going to let that poor woman, she pointed at Jenna, take the fall for you. You were going to destroy your wife. You will sign those papers. You will do the one decent thing you have left to do, and you will not drag your father and me through a criminal trial. Do not. Martin just stared at his hands. His jaw clenched, and gave one, sharp, defeated nod. The verdict was in. Grant's face crumpled. The last mask, the executive, the son, the husband finally dissolved, revealing the small, raw, narcissistic core. You, he suddenly screamed, his fist slamming the table, making the silver platters jump. He pointed at me, his face purple. You did this. You couldn't just leave. You had to dig. You betrayed me. You ruined my future. You ruined everything. I hadn't moved. I didn't flinch. I just looked at this hollow man who I had spent 11 years loving. You broke it, Grant, I said, my voice as steady as a flatline. You broke it all in 3 seconds, on an armchair, in a hotel suite just 1 floor below us. I just turned on the monitor so everyone else could finally see the patient was dead. The fight went out of him, all of it. He collapsed back into the chair. A hollowed-out man. He picked up Naomi's pen. His hand was shaking, but he signed. He signed away our marriage. He signed away his career. He signed away the whole elaborate, fraudulent stage he had built. Naomi took the papers, inspected the signature, and with a sharp, satisfying click, stamped them with the notary seal from her briefcase. Mr. Field stepped forward. "Mr. Holloway," he said, his voice flat, "in light of your immediate resignation, we will need your company badge and all company property. Now, Grant," his eyes dead, just ripped the visitor's pass from his suit. He pulled the Novodyne phone from his pocket and slid them both across the polished table. They came to a stop next to his untouched champagne flute, his Strategic Excellence Award. The heavy crystal trophy sat on the sideboard, glittering stupidly in the sunlight. Naomi packed her binder. The auditors collected Grant's phone and badge, nodded to Naomi, and escorted a still-shaking Jenna Cross out of the room, murmuring something about legal counsel and a preliminary statement. Gloria and Martin stood up, their bodies stooped, as if they had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at their son. They just walked out of the suite, leaving Grant alone at the head of the table, a king presiding over his own funeral. I was the last to leave. I picked up my copy of the signed, notarized agreement, my discharge papers. I held the packet in my hand, as steady and sure as a tray of medication. I paused at the door and looked back at Jenna, who was waiting nervously in the hall. "Jenna," I said quietly. She flinched, looking at me, her eyes empty and terrified. "You need a good lawyer," I said, not unkindly. "Call Naomi, because he was never, ever, going to protect anyone but himself." For a half-second, our eyes met, not as rivals, not as victor and vanquished, just as two women who had survived the same plane crash. She gave a small, jerky nod. I turned and walked away. I left Grant Holloway in the suite, alone with his trophy and his brunch for one. I walked down the silent, plush hallway, the same one I had crept down 3 months ago. This time, I wasn't hiding. My head was high. I reached the elevator bank and pressed the down button. The doors dinged open. I stepped inside, alone. The doors closed, sealing me in the mirrored quiet. I looked at my reflection. I looked at the papers in my hand. No one had told me to wait in the lobby. I looked at the panel of glowing buttons. I raised my hand and pressed G, ground floor. I was going to walk straight out the front door, into the daylight. My finger hovered over the button. A small smile touched my lips, a real one. I pulled my hand back and pressed a different button. Floor 3. The scribe's perch. I still had that old-fashioned to finish. Ding, the doors slid shut, leaving a man who had lost everything on the 21st floor. In front of me was a woman who had finally stopped waiting. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please let me know in the comments so we can connect and share your thoughts on this. Don't forget to subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.